Hey leaders, thank you so much for all of your leadership and prayers and support for our winter retreat this past weekend. It was phenomenal. I'm sure you can hear stories from students this weekend and this Sunday at youth group, but we had such a great conversation at the retreat and a great discussion together and just so much fun. So thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do what we do without you, and I know I say it a lot, but it is so true. So thank you, thank you, thank you for everything that you do. Now this week we are in part 2 of our sermon series called I'm In. And it's perfect for January because we're talking about what can we do new in this new year and how can we be in with God in a way that maybe we haven't been in with Him before. Now in church, we say a lot that God is inviting you to be in on a great adventure for your life, greater than you ever think or know is possible. Or sometimes we say in church that when you're in with God, you do certain things and you follow a different set of rules at times, and we live our lives differently because we're in with God. Or sometimes we even say, we look at other people and say, well, I don't know if they follow the same things that we do. And in saying that, we're actually saying that it's kind of like they're out. Now, I don't know about you, but rules like this don't sound like a great adventure. And when you say, when you're in with God, you have to do these certain things, that's not a great adventure. That's a set of rules. And I don't know, but if our focus is on the wrong thing altogether, that might be one of the issues that limits us from being in with God. See, rules aren't bad, but they aren't the whole point. Think about it this way. When you say you're in on a sports team, there are rules that you follow on a sports team. You're a team sport. You're not just by yourself. You have to dress a certain way. There's uniforms. You're held to a higher standard because you represent the team. And so we all know in life there's rule keepers and there's rule breakers. And breaking rules doesn't make you bad, or following them doesn't make you boring. But here's what we know about both of these groups when it comes to rules and this great adventure that God's inviting us to be in on. Both groups of people are focused on rules, and they have the rules at their full attention. Now, sometimes we feel the same way about church at times, and whether you're a rule keeper or a rule breaker, it's easy to become concerned with what you're doing right or concerned with what you're not doing right at the same time. And at that point, the rules have become the point. And like I said, rules aren't bad. When you're in with a group, there's certain expectations, but when they become the point and they take all of our attention, rules and expectations become unhelpful. And if keeping the rules is the most important thing to us, then we're going to be tempted to sacrifice relationships with people and relationships with God for the sake of the rules. Now, when you're in with the whole God thing, what if I told you that keeping the rules might actually be causing you to miss the most important parts of having a relationship with God and people? So the story we're looking at this Sunday is from the book of John, and it's about a guy named James. See, James loved the rules. James went to all the right schools. James believed all the right things. He was nice to all the right people. James was Jesus' brother. But here's the catch. James didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah from the very beginning. You see, James, like Jesus, was raised in a Jewish home, and that meant that he most likely followed a lot of Jewish rules. These laws were very intense. Keeping them was a full-time job, and more than that, these laws made it clear as to who was in and who was out. As a devout Jewish kid, James was no doubt a rule and a law follower. But Jesus didn't exactly follow the rules the way people thought the Messiah should. The main reason is because he was not afraid of guilty by association. He spent time with prostitutes, tax collectors, drunks. He spent a lot of time with people who were labeled as sinners by the Jewish society. Jesus made sure that everyone who wanted to be in was in. And in that way, Jesus seemed to deny the rules of the Jewish culture at that time. That alone was enough to drive the rule followers crazy. And in fact, the book of John tells us this flat out. It says, "For even his own brother did not believe him," talking about Jesus and James. James had no category for Jesus. Jesus didn't fall into a nice little box like other Jewish people who followed the rules. They had an idea of what the Messiah should act like and do, and Jesus wasn't close to that for them. But it wasn't the end of the story for James. Jesus died and was resurrected from the dead. Thousands of years later, we make a holiday out of it called Easter. But to the people who lived it firsthand, it wasn't just a cool moment to celebrate. This was a changes everything kind of event. When Jesus died, no one expected him to come back to life. It was a game changer for everyone, and eventually it was a really big deal for James as this was happening firsthand. It had to take a ton of humility to admit that James had been completely wrong about Jesus. But at some point, James made the switch from I'm out to I'm in. Now, fast forward a few years, and there's a big argument happening within the church. There are Jewish people who believe in Jesus that are following all of the Jewish laws. And there are people who believe in Jesus, but they aren't Jewish. There's non-Jewish people who are believing in Jesus but not keeping the rules. So the question came up in the early church as to who's in and who's out. Now, eventually it came time to make a decision. And you know who spoke up? James spoke up at this meeting. James, the rule follower, had to make a decision, and there was a decision to be made. And he was he going to make rules required to be a part of the faith, or would he allow room for things in a new way? And this is what James said. He said, "For it is my judgment, therefore, that we should not make it difficult for the Gentiles who are turning to God." See, James understood that rules don't have a heartbeat. The rules were still there, but there was something more important that James was concerned about, and that's relationships. See, James knew that as long as the rules were the most important thing, people wouldn't be, and that could keep them from getting to know Jesus. See, rules are good, but relationships are better. So this week, we're going to kind of land with two big ideas. Don't let the rules keep you out. The main thing for you to know is that God cares more about a relationship with you than getting perfect behavior from you. That's why Jesus came in the first place, because God knew that while rules could help you, he never wanted them to be between you and God. And the second big thing is don't let rules cause you to count other people out. Like we said, rules aren't bad. They're actually here to help you live a better life. But sometimes it's easy to look at people and point out and put them in categories based on which rules they follow and which ones they don't. Now, as tough as it is to hear, can I let you in on a little secret? When we count others out because of their behavior, we're actually being the opposite of what Christ would want us to be in the world. See, sometimes it's easy to think that the rules are the point, that they are the things that make you in or make you out when it comes to faith. But Jesus taught us something very different, and that's this, that relationships are greater than rules. Jesus put relationships first every time. And that's the life of adventure that Jesus is inviting you into. And maybe it's time to tell Jesus, I'm in. And so that's our discussion for this Sunday night. We're really looking forward to the struggle sometimes between the tension of keeping rules and following this better way to do life and a relationship with God that sometimes when we mess up, we feel like we can't have both. But Jesus came to say relationships are greater than rules. So we'll see you Sunday night, 4:45 for our small group leader meeting. Thanks for everything. Have a great rest of the week. Bye, guys.